The air hung heavy, thick with fear. The atmosphere was suffocating, as if the very essence of dread had seeped into every corner of existence. The year was 1945, and the once invincible Third Reich was crumbling. The mighty empire that had once seemed unassailable was now on the brink of total collapse. The streets of Berlin, once pulsing with the arrogant march of Nazi power, were now battle-scarred and eerily silent. The echoes of past parades were replaced by the haunting silence of destruction. Within the depths of the Führer bunker, a chilling drama was unfolding. The walls of the underground fortress bore witness to the final, desperate acts of a regime in its death throes. The man who had plunged the world into darkness was facing his own demise. Adolf Hitler, once the architect of terror, now found himself ensnared in the very chaos he had unleashed. The end, when it came for Adolf Hitler, was neither grand nor glorious. It was a pitiful conclusion marked by cowardice and despair, a stark contrast to the grandiose image he had cultivated. It was a descent into madness and despair, a fitting end for a regime built on hate and delusion. The final days were a chaotic whirlwind of betrayal, fear, and hopelessness. As the Allied forces closed in, the true depravity of the Nazi regime surfaced, painting a gruesome picture of torture, terror, and unimaginable suffering. The liberation of concentration camps revealed the horrific extent of the atrocities committed. The echoes of screams still seem to reverberate through the ruins of history. The remnants of war-torn buildings stand as silent sentinels, bearing witness to the horrors that unfolded within their walls. Deep beneath the Chancellery Garden in Berlin, a concrete tomb became Hitler's final sanctuary. This was the Führer bunker, a place designed to be a fortress, yet it became a prison for its inhabitants. The Führer bunker, a claustrophobic warren of rooms, offered little solace. The narrow corridors and dimly lit rooms created an oppressive atmosphere, amplifying the sense of doom that pervaded the air. The air was stale, thick with the stench of fear and sweat. The damp, rough concrete walls seemed to close in, trapping the anxiety and despair within. Maps, now outdated and useless, lined the walls, a testament to Hitler's shattered dreams of world domination. These maps, once symbols of grand strategy, now mocked the futility of his ambitions. Outside, the Red Army tightened its grip, their artillery fire a constant reminder of the inevitable. The sounds of explosions and the sight of smoke filled the streets of Berlin, signaling the end of an era. Inside, Hitler, a shadow of his former self, raged and raved. Paranoia consumed him. His once ironclad control over his emotions and his followers was now replaced by erratic outbursts and visible distress. Betrayal seemed to lurk around every corner. The atmosphere was thick with suspicion, as officers exchanged furtive glances, each wondering who might be the next to turn. His health, both physical and mental, deteriorated rapidly. The once formidable dictator was now a frail figure, his hands trembling, his body succumbing to the immense stress and pressure. The dictator who had once commanded millions was now a prisoner of his own making. Isolated and defeated, he sat alone in the dimly lit room, a stark contrast to the powerful leader he once was. The Nazis perfected the art of cruelty, turning it into a systematic and horrifying practice. Torture wasn't just a means to an end, it was an integral part of their ideology, deeply embedded in their twisted vision of power and control. From the cold, sterile rooms of Gestapo headquarters to the sprawling death camps, every location was a stage for their brutal acts. Human suffering fueled their reign of terror, leaving scars that would last generations. The techniques employed were as varied as they were barbaric. Waterboarding, electric shock, beatings, and starvation were just a few tools in their arsenal, each designed to break the human spirit. The physical pain was immense, but the psychological torment was equally devastating. Victims were often subjected to psychological torture, their minds systematically broken down until only empty shells remained, devoid of hope or will. The relentless mental anguish left them shattered, unable to find solace even in their thoughts. The screams that echoed through the halls were a testament to the depths of human depravity unleashed by the Nazi regime, a chilling reminder of the horrors that can arise from unchecked power and hatred. The Schutzstaffel, better known as the SS, were the architects of terror in the Third Reich. Fanatically loyal to Hitler, they acted as his personal army and enforcers of his will. Heinrich Himmler, the Reichsfuhrer of the SS, was a chilling figure, his cold, calculating demeanor masking a ruthlessness that knew no bounds. Under Himmler's direction, the SS grew into a vast and powerful organization. They were responsible for running the concentration camps, carrying out mass executions, and crushing any hint of dissent. Their black uniforms and skull insignia became symbols of fear and oppression throughout Nazi-occupied Europe. Section 5. Whispers of resistance, flickers in the dark. Even in the darkest of times, the human spirit sought ways to resist. Across Europe, individuals and groups, driven by courage and a thirst for justice, dared to oppose the Nazi regime. They worked in the shadows, their acts of defiance often small but significant. From distributing anti-Nazi leaflets to sabotaging German infrastructure, every act of resistance chipped away at the facade of Nazi invincibility. These brave individuals, many of whom paid the ultimate price for their defiance, serve as a reminder that even under the most oppressive regimes, hope can endure. Section 6. The price of defiance, retribution, and terror. Resistance, however, came at a terrible cost. The Nazis, obsessed with control, responded to any perceived threat with swift and brutal retribution. Collective punishment became a hallmark of their rule. Entire communities could be decimated for the actions of a few. Public executions, often carried out with chilling theatricality, served as stark warnings to anyone harboring thoughts of disobedience. The message was clear. Defiance would be met with unimaginable cruelty. Fear became a weapon, wielded with devastating effectiveness to maintain control. Section 7. The Shadow of Fear, Life under Nazi Rule. The shadow of fear stretched across every aspect of life under Nazi rule. The Gestapo, with its vast network of informants, created an atmosphere of paranoia and suspicion. Neighbors denounced neighbors, children were encouraged to report their parents, and even the most innocuous conversations could be deemed subversive. The Nazis understood the power of propaganda. Newspapers, radio broadcasts, and films were all carefully controlled, spewing forth a constant stream of lies and distortions designed to mold public opinion. Education was warped to serve the Nazi agenda, instilling hatred and prejudice in young minds. The crumbling facade, cracks in the regime. As the tide of war turned against Germany, cracks began to appear in the carefully constructed facade of Nazi invincibility. The Allied bombing campaign intensified, reducing German cities to rubble and shattering the illusion of security. The once boastful pronouncements of victory from the Nazi leadership rang increasingly hollow. The German people, exhausted by years of war and hardship, grew weary of the constant sacrifices demanded of them. Dissent, though still dangerous, became more commonplace. The regime's grip on power was loosening. The final hour, downfall and suicide. By April 1945, the writing was on the wall. Soviet forces had encircled Berlin, and the city was under constant bombardment. In the depths of his bunker, Hitler's reign of terror was coming to a close. Surrounded by a dwindling number of loyal followers, Hitler made the decision to end his own life. On April 30th, 1945, he and his mistress, Eva Braun, committed suicide. Their bodies were hastily cremated in the Chancellery Garden as Soviet shells rained down around them. Legacy of ashes. The aftermath of tyranny. The world emerged from the wreckage of World War II forever scarred by the horrors inflicted by the Nazi regime. The full extent of the atrocities committed in concentration camps like Auschwitz and Dachau sent shockwaves across the globe. The Nuremberg trials, held in the aftermath of the war, aimed to hold Nazi leaders accountable for their crimes against humanity. The trials served as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the need for international justice. Conclusion: never forget. The rise and fall of the Nazi regime stands as a chilling reminder of the fragility of freedom and the depths of human depravity. The echoes of the Holocaust, the systematic extermination of 6 million Jews, continue to resonate, serving as a stark warning against hate, intolerance, and indifference. The world must never forget the lessons learned from the darkest chapter in human history. We must remain vigilant, challenging injustice and discrimination wherever they arise. Only through remembrance and action can we hope to prevent such horrors from ever happening.